Hi, my name's Sarah Cannell and I'm going to teach you today how to make a willow and paper lantern like this one here, which you can then decorate afterwards. So to begin with, let's go through what you'll need. You will need some willow. So any sorts of sticks, as long as they're kind of got a bit of a bend in them, will do. But willow is the best material for this. So if we look at our list here, you'll need 4 sticks that are 14 centimetres long, so just cut those to length. You could use scissors carefully, or you might need to use some secateurs to snip them. So that's 4 14 centimetres long, 4 sticks that are 20 centimetres long, and then 4 sticks that are 80 centimetres long. This is for the height of your lantern. So these are the sticks that kind of go up the side, so you can choose what height you like, but having them at 80 centimetres will give you an option. You can cut them down shorter if you want. You'll also need a roll of masking tape. I like to use the thin one. If you've got wider, that's fine. That'll still work just as well. Some watered down PVA glue. So that's the normal white glue that you can get from supermarket or craft shops. And you want to mix that half water, half glue. You probably won't need a whole jar full like this, just a little bit. What else? You'll need some tissue paper. So the tissue paper I'm using is called wet strength tissue paper, which is what's used for kind of big carnival puppets and lanterns, which means that when it gets wet, it doesn't tear easily. You can use regular tissue paper. You just have to be a little bit more careful with it. And a paintbrush. Yep, so a brush. This is actually going to be for putting the glue on. So a nice flat wide paintbrush like that is a good thing to use. This is one of my favourites. As you can see, I've used it a lot over the years. And then this is something that might be a bit trickier to get hold of. And you don't have to have it, but it's quite nice. And that's a little tiny light. This one's got batteries in the top. And it's the sort that you get in party balloons. You get inside balloons that light up. Obviously a reusable one with batteries is better than a disposable one environmentally. And then just thread that onto a piece of string, and that will hang inside your lantern when it's finished, like that. Okay, so to start with, let's make the structure of the lantern. So clear the decks a bit, make sure you've got a good working space, and you'll just need your pre-cut willow sticks and your masking tape. So what we're going to make, if you have a look at the lantern, you've got a square base here, so we're going to make a square to make this square base, and then higher up here there is another square, which is the smaller one. We'll start off by making the smaller square. So you get your 4 small pieces and lay them out in a square shape. Just make sure that when you cut and select your willow that you're thinking about the thickness. So you see here these two are pretty similar thickness, because if you have one that's really thin, like the end of here, you see these two are different thicknesses, then your lantern won't be as even. So try and get a similar thickness of willow. Yeah, so then we're going to lay it out into a square shape, and then just cut off a small piece of masking tape, and you're just going to attach it to one end of one piece of willow, like that. Then you get your next piece of willow, put it at right angles to the first piece, and then you fasten it like that. So you've got your first join, a right angle join. Then get another small piece of masking tape and just go over that join just to strengthen it. So whenever you're putting the masking tape on, just make sure you kind of give it a good squeeze so that the contact between the tape and the willow is nice and secure. So for the next join, you're just going to join it to the end like that. Put your next piece at right angles. There we go. And it feels a bit wobbly at first and a bit loose, but as you build the lantern, the structure will get stronger and stronger. And then they are quite robust. So we're going to put our piece, wrap it around that corner, like that. So that's the second join. And don't worry if it's wonky like this, it will straighten out as you start to get more tape on and get the paper on. Okay, and then there's your third join there, and then the piece across the corner. Like that. And then you're going to do your last join. So this is when you can make your square shape properly. There we go. And then the piece wrapping around the corner. Now mine's looking a little bit more like a diamond here, but you can just stretch it back into shape to make a square like that. So that's the first square. So this is the top of your lantern. This is the smaller one. This is the 14 centimetre square. So put that to one side, and then you're going to do exactly the same with the 20 centimetre willow sticks. Okay, that's pretty much a square. So you've got your large square and your small square. The next thing to do is we're going to do the upright. So you want to get the longer sticks. These are about 80 centimetres of willow. You'll notice that it goes thicker at the bottom and then it goes up to a thinner end. You want to have the thicker ends at the bottom with the thinner ends at the top. And then if you just look at the ends of your bits of willow here, I'm just going to trim mine because that one's a bit scruffy. Make sure that you do this safely because secateurs can be quite sharp. I think just that one needs a bit of a trim so that they will stand up quite nicely like that. Okay, so then you're going to take your large square. So the small one we'll just put to one side. You're going to take your large square and sit it on your worktop. And this is where you need lots and lots of hands, really. So what you're going to do is you're going to do as we did before, where you put a little bit of masking tape onto the bottom of that piece. So that helps you to anchor it. And you're just going to stand it on top of the corner of that square and wind it round a couple of times. Okay, now it will feel quite wobbly at this point. And you just need to get hold of another piece of tape because then we're going to just strengthen it into place. And the brilliant thing about this technique is once you've made a willow lantern and kind of got to grips with the materials and what you can do, then you can make whatever shape and structure you can imagine. So if you wanted to make a big flower or a creature or a big shape, anything like that, you can just start building it. So you see I've got my upright here, which is wobbly, just about standing up by itself. So we're going to go with the next one. So again, get your bit of tape and then you're going to just anchor it with that end. Oops, I've kind of squashed it a bit too far there. It should work. Stand it on top of the join and then you're just going to attach it loosely. And you're going to get another piece and this should hold it in place. Right, so now you've got 4 uprights to your large square. Now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of hold these together. So I'm holding them together here. And then you're going to get your smaller square and you're going to thread the 4 ends, long ends, through the smaller square. Okay? And there you can see you're starting to get your lantern shape. So decide about what height you want it. Get yourself a piece of tape and then attach your first corner to the first upright. Work out where you are. And now what you want to try and do is make sure that this is perpendicular to this, so that they're both straight. And then we're just going to attach each of the lengths here to the corner. So just kind of choosing a corner and then wrapping it around the upright. At this point I just do one each, sort of loose-ish, so that you can have a look at it when it's standing up, or check that it's upright like that. And there you have, that's kind of a little bit wonky, but you can kind of move them up and down slightly at this point. And then squeeze the masking tape when you're happy with the shape. There, I think I'm happy with that shape now. So we'll pull together the top pieces here and just put a bit of tape around to hold them in place. That just gives it a little bit of strength. Hold it up, make sure you're happy with where that is, and then just wrap it around the top. Okay, so there we have kind of the skeleton of the lantern shape, and you can just move that around a bit until you're happy with where it is. So you'll need your PVA glue, you won't need your masking tape, you might need some scissors, and we need a brush. Now, PVA glue does wash out when it's still wet, but when it's dry, it can be a bit tricky to get out of fabrics and things. So what I do to make a good work surface is I get some bubble wrap, kind of like this, and I tape it. So I get my masking tape, tape it to a table or your whatever work surface you're working on. If you cut your tissue paper or your wet strength tissue paper into strips, what sort of width is that? That's like a couple of inches wide, something like that. So cut them into strips, whatever length the paper is, and then a bit of width. And then what you're going to do is I prepare your bubble wrap by just, it seems a bit weird, but just paint a little bit of the PVA and water onto the bubble wrap so that you've got a wet, gluey surface to put your first piece onto. Okay, so once that's been wetted, you lay your first piece of wet strength tissue paper on there, and then you put the glue, you paint the glue on, the gluey water. You paint that on. And then you lift it up. Now at this point it can get a bit tricky to handle, so you want to try and hold it just at the sides there. And for the first piece, what you're going to do is wrap it around and back on itself, and you kind of smooth it onto the willow, and then you wrap it round as far as it will go. And then when it hits the next piece of willow, like at the end, then you fold it round and back on itself. So you're going to do this a few times, so you should get the hang of it. But basically, if you think, you just want to make sure that each of the points where the paper touches the willow, that it is kind of completely touching it, and the glue, when it dries, it will dry taut. So at this point, the paper will feel a bit baggy and a bit soggy, but when it dries, you can hear that. It's a bit like a drum. It dries taut, so you don't have to worry about it being a bit baggy at this point. Right, so yeah, we keep repeating. So you get your next piece of tissue paper, lay it onto the gluey surface, probably should wear an apron when you're doing this. I tend to ruin quite a lot of clothes because I don't think about that in my workshop. So wear an apron, and then you're just going to kind of get layering around the lantern like this. So going back on itself, because this forms a nice join, and then taking the paper all the way around and back on itself. Okay, so you can see here we've got 3 sides that have been done. So this one here, I've decorated with, I did a bit of lino print onto some tissue paper, so it's very fine and still see-through, and then I've just glued those on. But you could draw directly onto the paper when it's done. You could draw on with pencils or all sorts of things, or you could do a potato print and print on like that. And then you're just looking for any little holes that haven't got paper and carry on, and like here I haven't got paper there, so you just carry on until you're completely covered. So I've got a bit more to do on this, and then you can take it, as long as the width is right, you can take it over the top. So I've come up here and then over the top and inside, so that gives you quite a neat finish. So at the minute you can see all the way through. So the bottom is normally the last bit because it's all a bit wet by now. So you just get a couple more lengths of tissue paper and then cover up the bottom, just sticking it back onto itself. There we go. That's one bit, and then I'll just carry on down the bottom. I think I might have to cut some more tissue paper. I'll show you there. And then back up onto itself like that. And like I said, if you go around and just check you haven't got any holes, and if there are any little holes like here, you can just patch it up with a piece, another bit of tissue paper, maybe do a couple more layers. If there's any bits that don't stick down properly, you can just add a bit more glue to it, sort of have a feel all the way around to make sure all the joins are well stuck down. Give it a good brush over. The last thing to do is just to hang your twinkly light inside. So get your twinkly light, put it on a piece of string. You should probably do this when it's dry, but I'll just show you. And then just tie it at the top. And you can choose, and this is when you can choose what height. So I'd have it on when you're deciding what position to put it in. So you can either have your light towards the top, or you can hang it a bit lower down in the lantern. I think I might go for it about there. So there are my lovely willow lanterns. And hopefully later in the year, if you make them later in the year when we're all allowed to meet up with each other again, we can parade with them for the first light festival, possibly on the beach, which would be a lovely thing to do. I hope you've enjoyed making your lantern, and thank you very much for watching.